Hey all, it's your professional turned chronically ill artist, and today we're going to do a cover mock up for the novel Wicked. I would just like to preface that the book Wicked is not for children. A lot of people have been going online talking and warning people about this because there's a huge misconception between the novel and the musical. Just, it's generally a good idea to understand that they're very separate stories with separate themes. And yes, there's a lot of overlap, but that doesn't change the fact. Now that I've given that warning, it's also fair to say right now the cover that I'm doing is this idea that it'll be inspired by the musical but for the book. Since the musical's out, it's very popular right now. This is how I would have done the cover as opposed to maybe a classic cover with the actual movie poster, for example. So what I intend to do here is I'm going to have Elphaba and Glinda and Fiyero, and they're going to be illustrated based off of how they looked in the film. I'm also kind of adding a bit more of an extreme pop of color to homage to the original Technicolor of Wizard of Oz. And I'm also going to include some gray tone, beigey, bramble background to homage to the original cover. And I believe you'll see later on, I also kind of mock the same font from the original cover because I really like that font, and it's just another layer of appreciation to that original cover. I had a lot of ideas about how I wanted to do this cover. Originally, I really wanted to have Glinda in her, bubble, maybe hovering around, and I wanted to do a cover that had the characters maybe placed but not necessarily in a scene. I've been doing a lot of scene work, so I wanted to do something a little bit more abstract. And I finally came to the idea of using the tornado as a cut-through shape on the cover, and it reveals the characters inside of them, with Elphaba being front and center. I think, like a lot of people, Wicked was the first musical that I was introduced to in my formative years that got me really into musicals. I was obsessed with it. I watched every variation on YouTube as I could because I didn't really have access to theater. I didn't even get to see it live until I was much, much older. And I was so thankful. It was my first musical to see in theater with a great cast. It was so magical. I cried most of the time. And then I bought the book and read it as a teenager, which was kind of a mistake, but like many people, I don't think we realized how adult the original book was. And so, also, I was at least old enough, that it wasn't the end of the world. I did never follow up with reading the rest of the books in the Wicked series. I think because I was kind of shocked by the first one. So, now that Wicked is out in theaters, I've taken it upon myself to reread the first Wicked book, and I'm really enjoying it. I think I'm able to grasp the lessons and the allegories and just the general plot a lot better now as that I'm an adult. So I think I will actually try to read the series and see where that goes. I heard that it's a little dark, but I just think that the writing is just so compelling and it has such beautiful prose and themes that it's just, I don't know. I'm really enjoying it, and it's been really nice to tap into a side of myself that I haven't really tapped into in a while. Like I haven't thought about Wicked in years because I've been so busy with work and my illness, and then having the movie come out, it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is something that like I really loved and I was like obsessed with as a teenager. Um, like this really formulated a lot about myself, and to kind of like go to the movie and feel that feeling again, like it was the first time I had been introduced to Wicked, was really magical, and I think incredibly rare. A lot of people, when they talk about their favorite genre movie, they always talk about how they wish they could experience it for the first time again. And I think with how the movie was done, at least for me, I got to experience it again for the first time. At this point in the illustration, you can see that I have Elphaba front and center. Her monkeys are kind of hiding in the back. I've included the flower in her hair that Glinda puts on during the popular scene. And then I have Glinda towards the bottom of the tornado and Fiyero just off to the corner of Elphaba. And I choose to do this because of a hierarchy. We see Elphaba the most, then Glinda because she's the second important character, and then Fiyero because he's the tertiary character. But also, Fiyero gets to be closer to Elphaba because he's more aligned with her, at least especially in the musical. And so, he assists her a little bit more than maybe we see Glinda do. And so that's kind of where that thought process is kind of coming from. I also added a little bit of straw because we know that in the musicals, spoiler alert, he's the Scarecrow. At this point, I feel like I've really restrained myself to the shape of the tornado. I think it's really swoopy, very angular, very cool, and I think it's overall a very interesting concept for a cover, and I'm really enjoying it. I think maybe if I were to do this again, I would have thought of a few tweaks, but overall, I'm very happy with it. The background, I went back to beige, and you can see I have some brambles here. These get illustrated, upgraded, I'd like to say, to something a little bit nicer. But this is to represent all the twisty vines and brambles and colorization monotones that were put into the original cover. So let's talk about fonts. I'm personally not a font creator. I feel pretty good about finding good fonts and then maybe tweaking them a little bit when I work on my own projects. But I'm not a font designer by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm essentially doing here is I screenshotted the original cover and then I used Illustrator to kind of trace the image. I was originally just gonna do that, but it came out really hideous, in my opinion. So I wanted to make it a little bit cleaner, so I end up going and tracing every single letter to kind of fit the shape of the original font, but just look nice and polished. I do also end up changing the original color choice of the font to match more of the Elphaba green that I think matches more closely to the film Elphaba skin color. I really struggled with getting the secondary title to pop because the book is called Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. And so I really wanted Wicked to really shine because that's the main title. That's how people know it by in terms of the musical. And I wanted the secondary title to be really kind of quiet. But I wanted it to fit right and obviously be readable. When you're designing a cover, readability is of course number one priority, So that was a bit difficult, and so I had to blend what I wanted to do in terms of the shape constraints and the color variations with that readability. At this point, you'll see that I play around with the idea that the font will be black in the gray zone and then white inside of the tornado. I thought that this was a really cool idea, and maybe it'll work with like a bigger font, but since I'm working so small and everything's already constrained, I feel like it makes it almost impossible to read, especially at a glance, and that's just not appropriate for a book. So I eventually will nix that. I just wanted to point out that it was kind of a cool idea. It's like fun to play around with that thought, but it just doesn't work in the end. I don't see a lot of digital illustrators really go over fonts and how to include them in your imagery, so I hope that my mind and thought process on this piece kind of gives you a little bit of insight to that. But of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I would be happy to answer it and tell you what limited knowledge I know about font work, or at least how I kind of fake it till you make it sort of figure out how to add a font to a cover. But I'm gonna kind of pop off, let you finish watching this video. So if you like this, please do what you do with all the big creators: like, comment, subscribe, and thank you so much for sticking around. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.